Enjoy the ride with Crystal Petry Consulting. So inspiring. Pushing you to your dreams.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes With. I'm your host, Crystal Petry. Today we are talking about the M word. Yes, the M word. That is marriage. So if you are married, if you're thinking about getting married, maybe you're single, if you're divorced and never want to get married again, but in the back of your mind, you might want to get married. If you've been married for 1 year, 1 day, 10 years, or 30 years, this is the podcast for you. We are going to talk about all about marriage. And the lady that has stepped up to the plate to educate us about the M word, a certified Christian life and mental health coach, Theresa Daniels. She coaches married couples and married individuals. Welcome to the podcast, Theresa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview, because as we were talking about off camera, I feel like, and of course this is just my point of view, that a lot of people, when they get married, they want the wedding, the beautiful wedding, the decorations, all the people, the tossing of the bouquet, the cake. But when it comes down to the marriage, I feel like they don't know the expectations. And am I wrong with saying that when you get married, there's expectation with that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think within every woman is a little girl who dreams of that marriage and the whole thing.
Yeah.
So yes, and then of course the Hollywood picture of that in the movies that we see. So yes, we already have that image in our mind of what it should look like.
Right, but it's never never how we imagine it in our head.
No.
So my first question is, okay, I understand marriage. You get up there, you say I do, and you're now married, but can you tell me what is marriage?
Well, marriage is two people that decide that they want to share their life together.
Okay.
Marriage actually is when you're sharing your life with someone, you're saying, I agree to share all of my life with you. Unselfishly. So it's like entering into an agreement that I want to do this. There's not anything in my life I want to withhold from you that, I want to share it with you.
Right.
So
do people go into it? That is an excellent definition of marriage. But I don't know if people go into it with that, thinking that I'm going to share everything with you.
yeah, no, I cannot say when I was young, I married very young, that I saw it like that. And so, because you're caught up in emotions, a lot of people enter that for many reasons. We're all designed, we want a relationship, you want companionship. You're caught up in, the initial attractions and butterflies or whatever it is that attracts you to that person. And sometimes, people don't think past that. What does this really look like or mean?
Yes. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, so a little bit about you. How long have you been coaching married couples, married individuals?
Since 2019.
Okay, and how did you get into this or start with the marriage coaching?
Well, it's been something on my heart for some time. I too have been helped in my past. Haven't we all?
Yes.
Where we've been at that intersection of our life. And so, when anyone's been stuck in life, I know what it meant to me to have someone that spoke into my life, that was there to walk alongside me, to help me out of that rough spot in life. And I just felt that pull, that call in my heart to do that. I want to help other people. And so that's when that journey began. And just a door opened for me to mentor and then to go forward with my credentialing and that sort of thing. So.
Now, you are married, correct?
Yes, I am.
And how long have you been married?
33 years.
Wow.
Yes.
You have a lot of wisdom to give us.
The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yes, absolutely. You're the perfect person for this interview then. The reason I asked you that was to qualify you for my viewers, but also can someone that's not married be a marriage coach or a marriage counselor? Do you have to be married to do that?
Well, I think to have a reference for it,
Yeah.
definitely. And some people are in that journey and maybe they've been married before, no longer married, they've been through divorce or that sort of thing because, we all are human
Yeah.
and we have life.
Right.
It happens.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I think just to have a reference for it would definitely be,
To help, it'll help.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. Should everyone get married, do you think?
I think that's an individual question.
Mm-hmm.
People have to ask themselves, do I want to share my life with someone else?
And be honest with that answer.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Because marriage is more about serving the other person than ourselves. You're having to give more than just being on the receiving end. And so maybe that's not an appeal for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't go into it with that in mind, maybe it's not meant.
So it's really in, I don't know if it's a scripture or not, but where it says that in marriage you have to die to yourself daily.
Well, actually we do. Absolutely.
Oh my God.
It is.
Yeah.
It's really, it is a die to self.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus went to the cross for us. He died for us. And, marriage is another version of that on this earth when we're serving someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You are, because every day it's getting up saying, I'm going to choose to love them.
Yeah.
I'm going to choose to help, bring out the very best for that person, support that person. Do we want to do that every day? No.
That's going to be my next question.
No.
Yeah.
We're human. So I think that's where God
Yeah.
definitely comes in.
And how do we get past that? Especially like if, and right now, we're talking about people that are married, especially if like your spouse has angered you or you got into a huge argument or whatever, you still, and this is a question, you still have to get up and say, and die to yourself and say, I'm going to choose to love this person.
Mm-hmm.
You can't take a day off. Or
Well,
can you take a day off?
there's times we want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And being quite transparent, we probably all have checked out at times. Maybe not, we're still there under the same roof. We're still going through the motions. But emotionally, we're like, shut the door.
Right.
We're living in that place of resentment or rejection or anger. And interesting you brought that. May I share a verse about that? So in Ephesians 4:26 and 27, I know 26 we've all heard a version of, don't let the sun go down on your wrath.
Right.
A couple of years ago, I read in the Amplified. I don't know that I'd read it in this version before. It really jumped out to me. Verse 27 says, and do not give the devil an opportunity to lead you into sin by holding a grudge, by harboring resentment, by cultivating bitterness. And I thought, I've been there before.
Yeah.
So going through the outward motions, but deep in our heart. So, yes, there may be anger. There's going to be times where we have to confront things, communicate about things, rather than just tucking it in, stuffing it down, because it's going to become toxic inside.
And how do you do that? How do you continue to die to yourself, wake up every day, I'm going to choose this person, I'm going to choose to love this person, I'm going to choose to help this person become a better person, and somehow get rid of, if that's the proper term for it, get rid of the resentment and not allow it to cause you to sin?
That's not just a real easy, just a black and white question, as they
Right.
say, just set answers. I believe it really takes God. We have to be honest with ourselves, what we really feel. Sometimes even I can say that I didn't know that was always a safe thing to do, just to bring God our most honest, raw emotions, whether it's hate, anger, fear, resentment, and asking for His help
Right.
in those situations. But in saying that, there still needs to be honest communication. You know, there are things sometimes that you have to confront with love and deal with things. And if you can't do that to, you know, the two of you alone, then that's where you could seek outside assistance. Maybe pastoral. It could be through counseling, or coaching, or, you know, if you can't move past those issues.
How does someone know that they're ready to get married?
There again, you know, if they're feeling committed to thinking about the commitment thing, you know, if they feel like they know that individual, the love, the emotions, you know, there's a lot to getting to know a person.
Right.
Sometimes all the mask or the walls don't come down. It takes some time in that thing. What I will say to that is, if a person has any reservations, you know, you want to hit the pause button. Don't move forward with that. If you have unanswered questions, you know, you want to be able to erase those question marks before you move ahead. I will say that.
What about, how does someone know that marriage is not for me? Like, I should not get married. Maybe I want to have the companionship with someone, but taking that next step to marriage, how does someone know that marriage is not for me?
Kind of what we had discussed earlier, if they're not willing to share their life in all aspects, because otherwise it's not really, it would be like a roommate.
True.
And so marriage, what that does is it brings in, you know, God's blessings along with that, because it's His design, marriage and family.
Now, I've known people, and maybe you have too, I'm sure some of my viewers have as well, people that have been married numerous times, 3, 4, 5 times.
Yeah.
Is there ever a point where you should just give up on marriage? You've been married 6 times and it just has not worked for whatever reason. Should you just give up on it?
I don't think an individual has to give up. You know, our families are the same. Our families have dealt with those issues of divorce and multiple marriages. You know, it's 2 people, so sometimes those marriages end because one person decides and maybe not the other. What I will say to that is it's never a waste of our time to stop and kind of step back and look at the whole picture. You know, maybe do some premarital counseling or just some individuals things. You know, look at it or the patterns. And I know that can be scary and offsetting for anyone to have to stop, you know, and what's wrong with me, you know, that sort of thing. That's not what I'm really talking about. Like, are there patterns in my choices? Are there things that are not serving me well, you know, by the choices that I'm making? Maybe, you know, the type of companions, and when I say that, especially if there's destructive patterns that seem to be a common thread between the different mates that I'm choosing. So, because there can be patterns, you know, it is something to stop and look at.
Do you think marriage is an outdated concept? I mean, we're, 2023 going into 2024. Is it an outdated concept at this point?
I do not believe so, but we are faith-based. So everything that we talk about and when we guide others in this journey of coaching or counseling is, biblical principles. And so God designed marriage and family. So no, I do not believe it's outdated. However, I do realize that many people are choosing to live together and maybe not choosing to marry. And that can be for various reasons. There can be fear. Is it really a commitment? Why do we need a piece of paper?
Right.
It is a way in our current society that we acknowledge marriage, through the ceremony. But it's also a heart commitment. So to say I can just, move in with someone and share all of these things that would be benefits between a married couple and it not be affecting you on a soul level, that's very deceiving and untrue, because it is.
So you think marriage is more than a piece of paper? Because you
Absolutely.
hear that so much that it's just a piece of paper. Why do we need it? It's just a piece of paper. But it is really more than
It
a
is.
piece of paper.
It is. And it's acknowledging something very, very important, whether you do that, the two of you together in front of a judge, or you have a huge ceremony. But if it is the heart commitment to that person, not just the fairy tale wedding and all the things that we as girls love, but it's, the heart commitment. Am I, before God?
Do you see people waiting later in life to get married? And if so, why do you think that is?
I think in some instances, yes, we're seeing that because there's professionals. People are, going to college, getting their careers, kicked off. They want stability, so maybe they're buying the house, checking all the boxes sometimes perhaps before they really slow down and have the time to focus on what a relationship is, because it takes work.
Yeah. And it sounds like it takes a lot of individual work.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Really. And I know that that's hard to look at because we go into it wanting our needs met. And we do. We have love tanks and all the things, but looking at ourselves, and it's never a waste as an individual working on ourselves, because as we're able to see our own weaknesses, look at those and our strengths, and ask for God's help to help move away from those things. I mean, you begin to see the world around you change, even your relationships. So it's never a waste to look at ourselves and work on ourselves as an individual.
Do you think single people should seek marriage counseling, for the exact reasons that you said, to be able to look at themselves in the mirror and work individually on themselves before they get married or before they think about getting married?
I think it can be a very positive thing. Honestly, I wish I would have, when we were young, that was a thing. Naturally, and I say it respectfully, you would go in and maybe have 2 or 3 premarital sessions with someone pastoral, just because that was a requirement for them to do the ceremony. But really to ask you the hard questions, and what are you there, so you can really look at, what am I doing?
What do you think are some questions as a single person that you should ask yourself before the marriage, before the engagement?
Okay, because many times we are led by our emotions,
Exactly.
also our attractions.
Yes.
So, personality, attitudes, the family.
Right, because when you marry the person, you're marrying the family too, right?
Right. I mean, the word talks about leaving and cleaving, and that's true. You're creating and beginning your own family. However, blood and family, it's part of the whole picture. So yes, definitely something that needs to be, those things: family, attitudes, personalities. What are their goals? Do they want children? Do you want children? Do couples talk about these things before they choose to just move ahead with it? Oh, we're so attracted and I love them, and because you have your natural attractions and that sort of thing that tend to get in the driver's seat.
Right. So it's best to ask these questions before, if possible.
Sure.
The emotional, the attraction, the lovey-dovey, all of that comes into play.
Yes.
So they can be honest with you, you can be honest with them.
Yes, and I would like to say one more thing, because I even recall when I was young, when you think being in love or love, that has many, it's kind of many definitions of that. And when I say it is, especially when you're young and, if you're coming out of school and, you're changing, you're evolving, you as an individual change. And what does this look like? Is this, what is love?
That's a great question.
So,
Is love enough in marriage?
it can be. I believe when God is the center of that, but it's, from the heart of that attitude toward the other person. But there's a lot of hard work that's going to have to come alongside that.
So you
To
need
make it.
love and the hard
There's
work.
action with that.
Yeah.
It's not just a word we throw out and then, that's supposed to just, make everything better.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Do you think there is ever a time where divorce is needed?
The word is, how God views divorce is, that he hates it because marriage was a design of his. Instances where there is chronic infidelity, abuse, those can be definitely situations to where, someone's been being physically abused. And there, and case by case, I know that there's situational. We always are for marriage if there's a way to heal and move forward from things. But definitely protecting yourself, your children, from a destructive pattern, sometimes that leads to, separation, yet still working on the marriage. But definitely in those two situations.
As a certified Christian life coach, how do you feel about prenups? Are you for them, against them? Are they needed?
Not something we've really had to talk much about. However, when you think of it from a biblical standard, you come into the marriage to become one, two people as one. So from that viewpoint, but what I will say about that, I know that, God doesn't change, but I know society, there's so many things out there. Sometimes things that can feel deceiving, or how well do I know a person. What I would say about that is if that is part of the conversation, that would need to be discussed. Like, what are their views on money? Why do they feel like this is necessary? I realize that can come into play, like if people are marrying later in life, or maybe it's a second or third marriage, and so perhaps they have children, that it would be their inheritance, or companies that were already established, there can be some things about that that would need to be discussed. But I will say, entering into marriage, you want to feel that you can trust this person that would want the best for you, your family as well. But I realize that that's not just a real easy, again, black and white answer to that.
Right.
But, definitely things that would need to be discussed further.
Right, and that would be, I feel like, a topic that needs to be discussed before all the emotions and the,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah, before that takes place. If you're going to do a prenup or not,
Right.
that needs to be discussed. I remember, this was years ago, someone said that you need to ask, and I don't remember who it was, but someone said you need to ask at least 10,000 questions of your spouse before you get married. What do you think? That's a lot of questions.
That is a lot of questions. But I think it's important to ask questions. Many people, like I said, enter into that agreement or relationship, and they don't ask the questions at all. So back again to the prenup, what is a reference to money? Why do they feel that way? I will say the other side of that is people that do enter into those prenuptial agreements, sometimes following that can be resentment, kind of a grudge. There's this agreement, so they're already going into it like you're holding, you're withholding something from me. So does it make it more like a contract? This is not a house or a car you're buying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, I know that depending on, it can be complicated if someone has a lot of assets, so definitely need to ask those questions.
Yeah.
Lots of questions.
Yes.
Go sit down and talk to someone that can help facilitate those conversations, and you get to the root of that to where you can decide what's best.
Yes. What are some, and I know there's tons of them, but what are a few red flags that, you're seeing in your spouse that should kind of make you think, or maybe not even decide to go through with the marriage, what are some red flags that people need to, be looking for, or that they need to be looking for or listening for during that dating phase?
Honesty. Is there, deceiving, lies, things people are hiding, which sometimes people can keep things hidden for various reasons. What I mean is, maybe trauma as a child or that sort of thing. Anger. What do you know about them? Is there problems with, addictions, or, those are just a few things off the top. Because we're all human, people have weaknesses, sometimes when I was mentioning earlier about love, how you see love, or defining that. And sometimes you can even connect with an individual, and maybe you have some sort of an attraction, but maybe their story is, well, I feel sorry for them. I want to help them, and I can help fix that. We cannot fix another individual. We cannot, if we need to manipulate to get what we want from that other individual, going into a relationship like that is totally unhealthy, and it's unrealistic, and you're looking for some really hard days ahead if you enter into that. Okay, do you have the same core beliefs? Again, your faith. If you're going into something and they're not a believer, or you're having to drag them to their, and you think you're going to fix that, well, fast forward to you're married and you have children, and see the heartache that's going to come with that. Because the word talks about not being unequally yoked, meaning an unbeliever with a believer, because darkness and light. And that's not being ugly toward another person, that's just saying your foundation is not the same. It takes God's Spirit to draw the heart of man. So we can't fix another individual.
Is that more of a female issue? Being a female myself, is that more of a female issue? Like, the women feel like, I can fix this man if I just marry him or have a baby for him?
Yes. And it can come from our own root, things that we may either know about ourselves or things that we don't know. So that goes back to when we talked about individual counseling. Many times we, do some tools that kind of guide us into a path of getting to know ourselves on a deeper level. What is the sum of me? What these thoughts and ideals that I have? Because we all have a family of origin. We all have, where we bring things forward. We have coping skills from childhood that we carry forward into our adult. Sometimes it's not healthy.
Yes.
Works okay as a child, but, as an adult, not so great.
Right.
So, caretaking, for example.
Yeah.
And let me fix this, or, he's so handsome, or he's got all these great things about him, and I just, I know I can make this all better. I can love him enough to make him want to, and you can't. You cannot change that for any individual.
Oh my goodness, that just makes my heart sad. Just
sad.
thinking about, someone going into the marriage, and I know that it happens and continues to happen. I can fix them if we just get married. If I just have the chance, I can fix them. But no one has that power.
No, and it's not saying that other individual's a terrible person. Maybe you love them, they love you, but you want to be able to solve their problems, fix their problems, love them through all of that. And, yes, we're all broken people, so you're going to share your life with another imperfect individual. However, there again, you can't force someone or make them just to decide to want to live a healthy life emotionally, spiritually, or even physically.
Do you think a marriage can be salvaged if there's infidelity?
Yes, it can. I'm not saying that's easy. We've seen this here in our office, worked with individuals, but I've also had friends and family that have worked through. I think it takes honesty. Once, these things have surfaced, to be able to step back and look at the marriage overall, and even taking your own, responsibility for, how healthy was the marriage prior to. And I'm not saying excusing any of those things, but, for many couples, you go through the motions, life, work, children, and all of these things in the marriage is not at the top of the list. Sometimes somehow we think that it's selfish to still nurture those things, but you have to, you need to along the way. So back to the infidelity question, I've seen some couples that just, their marriage is better now than it was
After the-
before. And when I say that, God has used it to where they're helping other individuals in their marriage, they're closer. But I think it took them down a path. Was it something, you wish happened? No.
Right.
Absolutely not. It should have never happened. However, both individuals decided to look at themselves, work on themselves, but come together and focus on the marriage through a different way than before. And they were able to heal from it. And I think that's all God. I really do. Because it's not easy. It's forgiveness and
Trust again.
tears, trust, anger, and to rebuild all that. So it doesn't happen overnight, for sure.
Is there a such thing as infidelity without the sex? Like maybe emotional infidelity?
Yes.
Okay.
And that is definitely one of those warning signs we talk about. People think that, oh, it's not, but it is. It's an emotional affair. That's why, and I say this very transparently. I know that people have friends of, the same sex, opposite sex, maybe working relationships, so they're communicating with people of the opposite sex throughout their day. But when you start confiding in someone of the opposite sex to, meet your emotional need, maybe your spouse is busy, their work schedule, you're just kind of in that space where you've kind of drifted from each other. Maybe it starts out venting or a common whatever, and then before you know it, those conversations become more often through texting or talking, and before you know, you're building that emotional bond with them. You're letting them meet a need that only your spouse should be meeting. And I'm not saying that's easy, but that there again, when there's a problem area, that's where turning to a trusted friend or someone pastoral or going to counseling and then talking to your spouse, yeah, because then it can lead to the full, affair.
Which one do you think is worse? The emotional affair or the actual sexual affair?
I think, with affairs, sometimes even the sexual, sometimes there could be these one-night stands, they never see them again. Something's going on between the couple, maybe they're not meeting each other in need, or, and I'm just keeping it real here, there can be issues of pornography where someone's watching things, and so they're dealing with that, the other spouse. But the emotional side, that to me takes it even a step farther.
Then the sexual side?
That can make it
So, because it's I think the emotional is worse.
Yes.
Because it affects the heart.
Yes, and you're sharing pieces of yourself and your heart, not just on a sexual, physical, which that can be, very devastating to the other spouse, for sure.
Yes.
Because that's something you're sharing that's not belong to anybody else.
Exactly.
But definitely when you take it a step further and you're confiding and you've got that emotional bond, man, that's really, really tough.
That is. Can a marriage survive the death of a child?
It's really hard. Yes, absolutely. I don't know, like just the current stats today, I believe the recent pass is around 50%. But what I would say to that is because of the grief journey, you will go through the steps, but everyone may, travel through that at a different pace. And so it's working on yourself and just not shutting the other person out. But I know that is something I've never experienced. I hope I never experience that in my lifetime.
Right. If, as a certified Christian coach, licensed coach, if a married couple finds themselves in your office, is it too late already for the marriage?
Absolutely not. I think it takes courage, and not because we're sitting in our office, but wherever you go, whether it's pastoral or you come into a counseling office is saying, you know what, we don't have all the answers. We're stuck. And I know this is this analogy, but just as our vehicle, if you get your vehicle stuck in the mud, you have to call for a wrecker to help get you out.
Yeah.
You know, we've all been there before in life. So if it's an impasse and it's, you know, you have two people at a 10 and we don't know how to lower this, you know, what do we do? So, yes.
Do you think marriage counseling should be a prerequisite, like just throughout the marriage? Or should it only be, well, not counseling, coaching? Should it only be like when you get stuck in the mud, then we want to come and seek out the coaching?
No, I don't believe that it has to be that way. Some people don't really view it as a need. I kind of look at it as it's just like maintaining your car or your whatever. You know, there are things you can do that can keep your marriage fresh and alive. And so maybe, you know, here's some tools, you know, how can we keep things kind of fresh and that sort of thing. So,
can you give me one of the biggest myths about marriage?
that it's easy.
It is not.
It is not easy. It is not for the faint of heart.
Oh my God, I have a cousin that says that all the time. She's been married 14 years. She says that all the time. It is not for the faint of heart.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's definitely not.
Do you think we've gotten to a place now where people can't take stuff? You know, kind of going back to what you said as a big myth that, you know, marriage is easy. Of course it is not. But people, can they still like take as much maybe as our mothers or grandmothers did when it comes to marriage anyway?
I think we're stronger than what we realize.
Mm-hmm.
God says He gives us strength, and we can do all things. I do not believe He would have designed this if we weren't able. But the core problem with marriage and the difficulty is we can be selfish by nature, me included. You know, we're human, and so I think we are able to.
Give me a truth, the biggest truth that you can think of about marriage.
The biggest truth. I think it can be a huge blessing to be able to share your life with another individual. You know, God's design, family, it really is a treasure. But I think everything can be, life is so busy. It can be hard, juggling all the things.
Yes.
But it definitely, when we do it His way, it's can be such a wonderful thing.
Now, I have read that the divorce rate is increasing. I'm sure everyone has read that or heard the news stories that the divorce rate is increasing. But is the marriage rate increasing? I never hear about that.
Well, recently looking at that, I think between like 2011, 2020 or so, 2021, it was on a decline. Somehow after COVID, there's, you know, now seeming to be more of an increase, you know.
As a certified Christian life coach, what is your intention with marriage coaching for couples and for individuals?
Again, we were talking earlier, life is hard.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, life is wonderful too. I think we have to get up every day and look and be thankful for all of the blessings. But because this is God's design, if we can help one other individual, one other couple, one other family find solutions for their marriage to heal, their families to be whole, that's so worth it to me, because we're partnering with His plan. And so I don't mean that to sound, you know, all a set way, but it's just family's so important, and I just want to be there and help other individuals. It's a privilege to be invited into their life.
Oh, that is. I didn't think about that. That is true. Wow. Okay.
So it's kind of just partnering, walking alongside them to say, hey, let's see if we can find a solution. What's the challenges? What's going on?
Have you had couples maybe on the brink of divorce that you were able to help them and walk alongside them to renew their marriage?
Yes. Yes.
How was that feeling?
Pretty awesome to see what God would do.
Mm-hmm.
But they both had to put the work. It's God. You know, you're here, like I said, we look for tools, we look for solutions. And, you know, when they would walk out of the office, you know, you go back to the real world, the everyday life, the hard things. But that's when, you know, they're deciding like, hey, we need to do something different. What we're doing is not working. And so they would put the work in, reading the books, doing the things, you know, kind of changing the patterns that they've chosen before. And you did just see God transform things, and it was just amazing to see that.
And opposite question, have you saw people on the brink of divorce in your office that ended up, even with the marriage coaching, they decided to just end the marriage?
I think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
in because we're human, and you know, everyone has a decision to make. Some people, by the time they come in, they've already have their mind made up that they don't want to work things out.
So you are a certified Christian life coach, and we've spoken about God at length during this interview. What can you say that God has to do with marriage?
Well, there again, He's the center of it. He designed all of that. And, you know, the Word talks about when Jesus, you know, Jesus loving the church, He gave His life, He laid His life down. Mm-hmm. And when I believe, I'm like, you know, men don't understand women. Women don't understand men.
It's true.
So I laugh and say, wow, it is a dying to self. It really is a dying to self. So serving that other person, it's, you know, I guess he's teaching us all something, and we're growing through the process.
It's true.
Of course, we get some benefits along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when you have two people that already know that and have that foundation.
Does it make it easier?
I believe it does. Mm-hmm. I believe it does, because you're focused. It doesn't mean you're going to get it right every day, but I think your focus is the same. Yeah.
Can someone that believes in God, that's a Christian, and someone that does not believe in God, or maybe they're unsure about the existence of God, can that marriage last?
I think we spoke just briefly earlier about, you know, His Word warns against
Right.
Going into a marriage ahead of time knowing that, because that's going to be very difficult. However, the Word does say, you know, if you're a married woman, a believer, and your husband's an unbeliever or non-believer, that he can be won over, not by the words of the wife, but by her actions. So what does that tell us about, you know, how we live our life? That means treating how we treat that other person. So, yeah, that kind of burns.
Yeah, it does. It does.
But it tells us it's possible.
Yes.
So God can. There again has to be, you know, His Spirit that draws.
And you know what? I just thought of a question when you said that. Do you think the success, the emotional success, or the success of a marriage is primarily on the wife?
No.
Okay.
I do believe, you know, of course, men and women many times are both having to work. It takes sometimes two to work for the household. But, you know, it's sharing in what it takes to make the house run and for the marriage. But I do believe that you can set the tone in your home. A woman has a very powerful influence in that. And I don't think that many times we often recognize that, how vital that is. Yeah.
If a married couple is having problems in their marriage, how do they seek God? I mean, because it seems it's not like an intangible thing, But how do they actually go about seeking God for help when they're having struggles and the arguing, the fussing, the fighting, whatever it is going on in the household?
Well, obviously praying, are they involved in church? Are they, do they pray together? There's other things that we can, make suggestions, and I know that that's like, okay, just pray and read. But, what are the patterns of our life? What do we do every day together? Inviting him into that space. I have to be transparent. We all go through struggles in life.
Right.
But have we always, we just go through the motions? But do we invite God into that? Kind of like open the door to that problem. Because sometimes we don't always want him to do what he's going to tell us to do.
That's why we don't ask.
That's why we don't ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're suggesting that actually having the conversation and saying, God, I invite you into this argument. I invite you into, this emotional distress that we are going through.
And praying together. Some couples will do communion together in their home. There's different books, and I say that. Some people are like, I don't like to read. I don't want to read. Well, if it could change your life, kind of like you can come in the office here, and you're going to pay for sessions, but if these tools are suggestion and that's, I don't read books, or you can do Audible. You can do, if it could change your life.
Why not?
Would you not? Because we don't all have all the answers. So it's about perspective. And that leads me, and I know this, I don't want it to sound off subject, but there's a story in the Bible where the lame man laid by the pool of Bethesda for 38 years.
So long.
38. And the healing waters were not far from where he was. So people would try to make it into the water because they feel like, the Spirit stirred up the waters, they could get in, they would be healed. But it's interesting, when Jesus walked up, he didn't just heal him, he asked him the question, do you want to be healed? And that stands out to me. He asked him the question, do you want to be healed? Then he gave him instructions. The man told him, well, no one's helped me into the water. They would get in front of me. But he says, pick up your bed and go forth. So that leads me to thinking of that story. It requires action on our part.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so good.
And I know that's complicated when you have, I say complicated, can be. You have two individuals. So we all have two wills, two people that have to decide they want to do those things.
Right. Do you think the hardest part about marriage, or one of the hardest parts of being marriage, and again, marriage is a beautiful, God-ordained thing. I acknowledge that. But do you think one of the hardest things about marriage is the two becoming one?
Yes.
Because all your histories, all your childhood traumas or childhood thoughts, you're bringing all of that into the marriage.
Yes, or what experiences we have leading up to that. Yeah. Or even our family of origin. What did we see growing up? Were we in a single home? Did we have parents that were married? Was it a healthy marriage? Kids, a lot is caught more than taught, as they say. I know those aren't my words, but they do. So moving forward, we often live our lives based on what we saw, the patterns that we learned growing up.
Yeah, that two become one. Yeah, that seems difficult. So as a certified Christian life coach, if someone or a couple or a married individual, or even, because we spoke about even single people should seek marriage counseling before they decide to get married, before the engagement, seek marriage counseling or marriage coaching. Do you see people, or can you coach people that are unbelievers or not believers of God?
Absolutely. Okay. And I tell them when they come in, we do an initial assessment, and that's, I share with people, I say this is kind of like you sharing the roadmap of your life with me. So I'm going to ask you questions about your health, about your emotions, even spiritual questions, so I know what your reference is.
Right.
What do you believe? So absolutely, and then I let them know, because we are faith-based, I will share, you know, but I'm there to listen, and oftentimes if I'm going to share even a verse, I want to be led to do that by God, and I'll say, may I share this with you, so.
Do you think it's healthy or unhealthy for parents to stay married for the kids? We hear this a lot. We're going to stay married for the kids, and when they graduate high school or finish college or whatever, then we'll divorce.
It can be an unhealthy situation. There again, that's not just a real black and white answer, but I will say if there is, you know, if there's abuse, addiction, if we think it only affects us or, you know, that one individual, it doesn't. It affects the family as a whole. So, you know, there again, we are for marriages. I've seen God turn around situations, even that we would give up on and say, oh, that looks impossible.
Yeah.
But he was able, you know, to turn it around. Again, it was with two open hearts that decide we want to work on this. But in those situations, no, it's not always healthy or a reason
to stay married. When people talk about marriage a lot, they're like, you just need to communicate. You just need to communicate better. And that's true. I believe that. But I feel like that's such a general term. Just communicate. Can you give us some ways on exactly how to communicate or what it is we need to communicate about when you're in a marriage?
Well, you know, listening and hearing is one of those things. Women in general use a lot more words than men do. So oftentimes that's, you know, I don't understand her. She said he doesn't understand me. Couples will find themselves on what they call a crazy cycle. They don't know how to jump off of it. So many times that's a very common problem within marriages is communication. So we will, you know, make some suggestions, some tools. One of the things we use is one of the books that we use. Actually, it's really great. It's not new, but it's Cracking Communication Code, and it kind of guides the couple through that. And we make suggestions about them reading it together, actually, because you can't communicate. So if you read your copy, he reads his. This kind of opens up and facilitates the conversations. So there's things a person can do along the way with that. There's other resources that we use as well.
Is communicating in a marriage a continuous education? Like it's something that you always have to do?
Yes, always.
And I feel like, as you stated before, women tend to communicate more, and men are like, all she wants to do is talk.
Yes, yes.
It's kind of that women are from, what was that book?
Or,
Men,
yeah.
yeah, it's that thing. Okay, is the silent treatment healthy in a marriage?
No. No. To be silent and not give an answer is an answer. And it actually creates quite, you know, rejection, resentment to build on the part of the other spouse. Now, I will say, sometimes maybe that person growing up, that's what they saw. Maybe they're not comfortable expressing their emotions or even talking about things because it's just what you didn't do. Or you've even heard some men say, you know, kind of, they learned growing up, well, you don't talk about your feelings. Daddy said you don't talk about your feelings. But so sometimes that's something that has to be worked on, like kind of practicing it, you know, being intentional with that till where you become more comfortable and it feels like a safe space to do.
And that actually was my very next question. How do you get out of that cycle of the silent treatment?
It's, like I said, working as individuals and being able to help learn to be intentional with talking and sharing because it doesn't always come naturally, especially if it's been a pattern that's been in place for a length of time. You know, some people aren't even in touch with their own feelings or you're going to ask me to talk about them or identify, so they just, anything that comes to that, you know, they just shut down.
That's true.
I'm not saying he excuses it, but what's their reference for it? maybe growing up there was things, always turmoil or chaos surrounding that. So it's not safe, it's easier just to wall off. But what do we do when we wall off? We kind of imprison ourselves, if you think about it. Those walls become thicker and higher. People can't be, you don't let people in, so.
Wow, that was really good. Can you explain the 80-20 rule in marriage?
That's referring to, in marriage, like going into it expecting your spouse or wanting your spouse, the expectancy is for them to meet 80% of your needs or fulfillment, and you being responsible for the other 20%, basically.
Is that healthy to go in with that?
I think whether we talk about it as being an 80-20, if we go into a marriage period thinking that any other individual can completely and 100% meet every need we have, that is unrealistic. No one on the face of this earth can do that. And if we place that in the hands of another human being, that is unrealistic. Because beyond that, God also created each one of us, yes, for relationship, but we have that space within us that only He can fill. So if we're seeking it only through other individuals and outside sources, we will never be satisfied inside, ever. It's impossible.
And I feel like that sets the marriage and the individual up for failure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And some of those things, you know, with the women in our love tanks and wanting to be filled, throw this out there too, like knowing what that person's love language is, for example. Everyone's heard of that book for sure, but many times we meet the need out of what we see necessary or how we feel loved. Well, I do this for her, doesn't she know? Or I do this for him, doesn't he know I love him? But is that how they feel loved? You know, do we take the time to get to know that? So there are ways to like narrow that gap of the unknown. That is knowing, like we said, how does that other individual feel loved? Getting to know that. Is it affirmation? Is it touch? Is it, physical? So what makes this other individual feel loved? That's actually one of the things on our questions we ask them when they come in. What is your love language? Sometimes people are like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that. Right. What makes you feel special?
Okay, so what are some things that make a healthy marriage?
Communication, having fun together, being a support role for each other, the commitment side of things. When you think about your promises to one another, that no matter what is it, in sickness and in health, the unconditional, are they going to be my person? Are they going to be there for me? Are they going to be there to cheer me on for my dreams?
Right.
Just, that mindset. Do you want the best for that other person?
And do they want the best for you?
Yeah. And are you there to help nurture that and support that emotionally? Or make them feel that you do?
Oh. And what would you say is the goal of marriage?
The goal of marriage. Well, there again, sharing your life with that individual, with another individual, to make a happy, healthy home. Bringing out the best in another person, to where when you're sharing your life with them, it feels complete.
As we get ready to wrap up this interview, a couple questions about your coaching services. Number one, are you accepting new clients?
Yes, we are.
And if someone is interested in receiving marriage coaching as an individual, single person, how would they get in touch with you?
You can reach out to ND Christian Counseling. Our number is listed on the website. We're located in Lumberton on 100 Lynn Drive. So that's how they can reach us.
Okay, and my last question for you, Theresa, and you have been an amazing guest. I don't know many people that would want to step in on camera and talk about marriage, because it's such a, the topic can go either way.
It can.
It can go either, it could be like the best thing ever, or it can be explosive.
And that's true. And there's a lot of information out there, and there's a lot of answers. And I just say if God's in the center of that, because it's not always just real set answers for everything. I get that.
Absolutely. Who do you think would make, for my final question, who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Absolutely know who. I would like to put you in contact with Melissa Monroe from Jasper, Texas, Champion Oaks Ranch. They help in rebuilding families. They work with children and teens through equine therapy. I don't know if you're familiar with
horses, correct?
Yes. But they're doing some absolutely incredible things, even partnering with the schools and some of the juvenile, probation situations and that sort of thing. But I'll let her tell you all the details. But some very wonderful things happening there.
Oh, I'm excited about that. That's going to be a good one.
Yes, I believe so.
Well, thank you so much, Theresa, for sitting into the hot seat. I don't know if you felt like it was a hot seat or not.
Sort of.
But thank you so much for doing this podcast and doing this interview. I appreciate you so much.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
And thank you so much for tuning in and watching. You can get this podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.
Crystal Petry Console.